Hey guys, my name is Price, and I'm here with Rick, and we are playing a little bit of Civ V. We decided we wanted to give you guys kind of a how to play Civ basics tutorial, because a lot of people say that when they look at Civ, they want to play it, but they're just, I don't know, terrified. It seems like there's so much to do. What do you think, Rick?
There is a lot to do, and we're going to try to break it down to its most simple and easy to understand basics, and hopefully within the next hour, you guys will feel comfortable enough to start a game of your own.
Definitely. Okay, so let's look really quickly at the settings that we chose for this game so that you guys can get an understanding of what we're going for. So we decided to start out playing as Poland because they have this ability called Solidarity, which means they get a free social policy whenever they advance to a new era. And so we're hoping to take advantage of some social policies in order to get some bonuses there, so that's what we wanted to focus on. We chose a tiny map, and we chose to play on continents, just because that's kind of a standard way of playing the game. We put the difficulty level to Prince, but if you're playing for the first time, it's totally okay to play on an earlier difficulty to kind of get the hang of the game. And what our goal with this series really is to get you feeling confident enough to play at the level of Prince. You don't have to get to the level of playing on Immortal or any of those crazy higher difficulties. Really, Prince is a good, safe place to be at where you're not having such an unfair advantage over the AI that it's no longer fun. It can still be challenging on Prince, and it gives you the freedom to try some crazy stuff. And we're going to be playing on quick time, just because that tends to be the pace that you want to go at in order to get through the game relatively quickly.
Yeah, I think it's important to explain that even on quick time, depending on the size map that you play, a game can last 3 to 4 hours easily. So when you're playing on the long time scales, we're talking like days these games will go on. So be aware of that when you pick, the time that you're going to be playing.
For sure. When they say standard, what they really mean is the game should take you 8 hours, to complete on the minimum side. And so if you're not wanting to put in that kind of time, and really when you're trying to learn how to play the game, it's probably better to play on the quick settings so that you can kind of get a lot of experience quickly and seeing how the game progresses, rather than, getting yourself stuck into a game that's going to take a very long time. Okay, so let me get out of the menu here, and then let's talk about how we start out. So when you start the game, you've got this guy here with the flag above his head, which is a settler. And this is the unit that you're going to use in order to found your first city. And you also start out with a warrior. And so this is going to be your first military unit. And really early in the game, their main purpose is to explore around so you can get a better idea of the territory that surrounds your city. When you start the game, there's this thing called start bias, which basically tends to put you in a pretty good spot for founding a city. And so that's something that we like to take advantage of when we're playing the game, because as soon as you can get a city founded, the sooner you can start producing things and you're not getting behind any of the other civs. So what is it, when we say a good city? What is a good city spot? What are the things that add to that? Rick, do you want to tell us about luxury resources? We can see a couple here.
The luxury resources that we're looking at are the pig and that statue of David. The pig represents truffles, and the statue of David there, that's marble. So those are luxury resources. It's going to give you some coin, in this case 2 coin, and then each luxury resource is going to give you 4 happiness. And we'll explain happiness in depth a little bit later.
But yeah, so luxury resources are one of the really important things that you're going to want to take advantage of when founding cities, because happiness is one of the most important resources for you to keep track of so that your empire can grow. And so seeing that this starts location that we have has 2 luxury resources is a fantastic spot to start our city. Really quickly, I want to show you guys a UI thing that you can do that I think is helpful, and we're going to leave on for the rest of the game, is you can go over here to this toggle map options little notepad looking thing, or scroll. You click that button, and you can hit what are the hex grid, which shows you exactly where all the different hexes are. You can toggle on the yield icons, so you know exactly how much each of those tiles is worth in terms of the basic resources in the game. And you can also turn on the resource icons. And so this shows up with those nice little bubbles that kind of let the luxury resources and other resources stand out. And so when we're talking about other resources, one of the other ones that we can't see at the moment, but that will reveal themselves as we gain new technologies, are strategic resources. So these are things like iron or horses or coal. And you can imagine that these are extremely useful for building your army, right? You need horses if you want cavalry, you need iron if you want swords. So you're definitely going to want these. And also strategic resources provide a lot of production, and production is how you build things, and we'll talk more about that later. Rick, do you want to tell us about bonus resources?
Bonus resources, such as deer, such as wheat, you'll see cows, and sometimes these are resources that are going to contribute to your city. In this case, you see the wheat down there in the tile to the bottom left, and that's going to give an extra 1 food to your city. So these are resources that aren't strategic or luxury, but are going to contribute directly to your cities.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like they're not giving you the happiness or the gold or any of that kind of stuff, but what they are providing is a nice boost over what that tile normally would give you. So if this tile here, this wheat tile, didn't have wheat on it, it would be the same as this plains tile over here, providing only 1 food and only 1 production, which is not a huge yield. You want a little bit more than that. So having this wheat so close by is going to be really useful. And basically the other thing that you want to consider when you found your city is just having a nice spread of high yield tiles. And we know we have a lot of forest here, so when you cut down forest, that'll reveal plains or grasslands, and you can actually hover over them and you can see what's beneath those. And so what we know from grassland is that grassland provides 2 food basically, and since we're along a river, rivers are really useful to be along because they provide a lot of access to food, especially as you get better technologies. And so what you want to have is a nice spread of tiles that are going to give you production, food, and gold if you can get it. And so that's what we're going to be getting from our luxury resources here. And the main thing that it looks like this city is going to provide us with is going to be a lot of food. And that's good. Having food is really useful in getting your population up, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But this looks like it's going to be a pretty good spot to start a city, so we're going to go ahead and found it so that we can move on with discussing the rest of the basics.
Yeah, found it. Found that city.
All right. Ooh, look, more truffles. Nice. So, we founded our city, and a couple of more things have popped up. You'll see, we can see a little bit more. Our fog of war has gotten a little bit cleared up. And we've gotten these little icons that have popped up over on the side over here. And so, you get these 2 tasks that you need to take care of. You need to choose your first production, and you need to choose what you're going to research. So before we start talking about production, which is a little more complex, let's talk about science. So Rick, do you want to tell us a little bit about science?
Yeah, science, it's my favorite victory condition, scientific victory. But basically, science is what's going to contribute to your overall research. So the more science you're generating, the quicker you're going to research new technologies. And there are several buildings that are several wonders as well that are going to help to boost your science. And also,
there's great people that'll provide you with science. So like if you can get a great scientist, you can put down a special tile improvement called an academy, which will boost your science. And let me really quickly click on the city. And you can see up on the upper left here, we see everything that this city is producing per turn. And so we can see that we're producing 4 science per turn. And when we hover over that, what we see is we get +3 from the buildings that we currently have in our city, which I believe is the palace that you come with right away. Yep. And then we're also getting +1 from our population. You get additional science for having more of a population. So being able to increase our population, that's going to increase our research. And so that's going to be really beneficial to us.
Yeah, let me interject there real quick. So that, like Price said, there's a relationship between science and food in that way. Food's going to help your city grow. The more food you have, the more population you have. So a city that's well fed is a city that's going to churn out scientific research.
Exactly. So that's why food is really crucial to balance. And so let's click on this little beaker over here, this research project button that you can see. And what we're going to see is that we have these 4 options that we can choose from. And next to these, you can see little icons that say your economic advisor recommends this, your science advisor recommends this. these recommendations can be really useful for you, especially when you're first learning how to play the game, as to knowing like what are the most important techs to get early on. But before we do that, let's actually click and look at the full tech tree. It's going to be a little overwhelming at first, but bear with us. So what we can see here is a huge list of all of the technologies that you can research throughout the game, all right? It goes way, 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 way down, all the way over to future tech. But as we start, we can only pick from these first four. We have pottery, we have animal husbandry, we have archery, and we have mining. And each of these techs, as we research them, are going to provide us with some new things that we can do. So if we research pottery, now we can build a granary, and we can build a shrine. If we research animal husbandry, we can suddenly build pastures, and horses are going to be revealed on the map. So there's lots of bonuses to researching each of these things. And sometimes it can be really smart to look ahead and see what the next technologies are going to be unlocked once you research that first technology. And so one thing that we can look at here that I think is really valuable early on, and what I think that we're going to do for our path that we're taking in this basics video, is we can see that once you research pottery, you can unlock the researching of writing. And writing is really, really valuable, and then it provides you with a lot more science. Specifically, you can build libraries in your cities, and you can even start the construction of the Great Library, which is a world wonder, which we'll talk about once we get to that. And it allows you to establish embassies with other civs. But the real big thing we're looking at here are libraries and the Great Library, because if we can increase our science output, we can get techs faster, and we can leave our opponents in the dust. So I think what we're going to start with is we're going to start with pottery, because pottery in the short term also provides us with the granary, which is going to give us a boost to our food production. And once we get that built, each source of wheat that we have, which we know we have in this city, is going to get an additional bonus food. And so overall, getting pottery and getting a granary up really fast is going to be a smart move for us in the long run with production. Okay. So that is research. Now let's talk about production, this other thing that we have to deal with. Oh, just ending on the research thing. If you look in the upper left here, we can see the progress that we're currently making on our research. So you see we have 7 turns is what it's telling us that we have left until pottery will be researched. So, production. Rick, do you want to tell us about some basics for production while I click through here?
Yeah. Give me a second here. Okay, so production is what is going to contribute to building buildings and units in your city. So going back to the yield icons that we were discussing earlier, the hammers represent production to your city. So the more hammers, the quicker your buildings are built. And there are several buildings that contribute directly to production. So one of the earliest here, let me find, would be... I'm sorry, it's a little bit harder for me because I'm observing this match, so I don't have a direct view.
Yeah, Rick's currently using observer mode, which is something that you can do when you play multiplayer maps, where someone can view the map, but they don't have access to all of the same things that I do here, where I can see all of the different yield icons in each city and what we can build and everything like that. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, for instance, once we research metal casting, we'll be able to build a workshop, which gives a plus 10 production and an additional 2 production hammers to your city. So that's just one example of one of the buildings that contributes to production. But just think production equals how quickly you can build units and buildings.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the resource that you're putting into building your units and your buildings. And what you can see over here is just outside of range of our city over here, we see this grassland hill over here that's surrounded by the river. And you see that hills have a bonus to production. And you can actually build mines on hills once you have the appropriate research. And so that's going to also play into boosting your production output in a city. So the things that we can start out building are a worker, a scout, a warrior, a monument, or a settler. But we don't have enough population to start building a settler just yet. And settlers are how you build new cities. But the thing here that we want to consider is, what is the smartest move in the long run? And if we go over here and we hover over the monument, we can see that what this is going to give us is a bonus to culture. So while it could be useful for us to go and try and maybe get another unit to start exploring the area really quickly, it might also be smart for us to get another building up and running that can provide us something else.
Yeah.
So, Rick, you want to tell us what the benefits of culture are?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
First off, just going back to that monument thing, it's my rule of thumb that once you found a city, build a monument. That's the first thing you build, pretty much 9 times out of 10. You want to get that culture going early. Culture, it contributes to, I'm going to pull it up here real quick, your policy track. So,
Yeah, I'll point it out really quickly. Up here in the at the top of the map, you can see I'm hovering over this thing that says next social policy in 15 turns.
there we go.
And you can see that we're producing +1 culture a turn currently.
So we've got, in the early game, there are 4 policies: tradition, liberty, honor, and piety that you can choose from. They both have their they all 4 have their pros and cons. Usually you'll want to go tradition or liberty early game. Tradition's going to help your city grow faster, and liberty is going to help boost culture and help your city expand quicker.
Yeah, so whereas tradition is focused on having, smaller numbers of cities, but having those cities get large, liberty is about expanding rapidly, so having a lot of cities, but you might stay smaller in each of those cities.
Right. There's something that they call building up, or what's it? Building tall or building small?
Tall or sprawl, yeah.
Sprawl, thank you.
Yeah.
Tall means building fewer cities with huge populations. Sprawl means making a lot of cities with lower populations. And we'll talk about that more in depth.
Yeah. So that's one of the key focuses for culture. And as Poland, we saw that our special ability is going to be that we're going to get a free social policy as soon as we reach the next era. And that's in the tech tree. Once we reach a certain point in the tech tree, we've reached a new era. The other thing that culture does is it's what determines how quickly your borders expand. You can think of it as your culture gets stronger, you're encouraging the lands outside of your city's boundaries to kind of expand and put more people there. And so if we click on our city again, we can see this little purple hovering tile over the marble, and that is where our next cultural tile is going to form. And once we choose what we're going to build, so we're going to go ahead and start with, here. So what you can see here is 10 turns until border growth, okay? So we're getting +1 culture a turn, and it says we have 0 out of 10 towards border growth. And once we get that 10th culture, we will get that tile. That will suddenly be in our sphere of influence for this city. So that's going to be really, really beneficial. So if we get more culture, we'll be able to expand faster, we'll get more tiles faster like these truffles, and so it could be really smart to go ahead and choose that monument for our first building. And like Rick said, it's a good rule of thumb. If you're not worried that you're going to get attacked early on, if you're not playing with raging barbarians or something like that, monument is a smart move to go with. Or if you're trying to really, really scout the area, sometimes maybe a scout and then a monument is good, but monument is a solid choice to start with, so we're going to go with the monument. So looking in the lower left now that we've chosen the monument, we can see how long it's going to take us to construct our monument. So it's going to take 6 turns, and we can see that we are currently producing 5 production a turn from the tiles that we're using, and the overall cost of a monument is 26. So if we can somehow increase the amount of production that we're producing per turn, then we're going to be able to build that monument faster. So let's go and look at something called citizen management. This is kind of a really high-level thing, and for the most part, you can leave this on default, and you will do just fine. Your city is going to choose to work the tiles that are the best. But what I mean by working tiles is that for every population you have in a city, you get one of these little units, and you can put them in these different tiles surrounding your city in order to work those tiles. Right now, it's pretty obvious. Our best tile to work is this wheat tile. That's the best one we have within range, and so we're going to want to work that tile. You can go up here in the upper right, and let's say that we had a big plethora of tiles, say that were producing us a lot of gold, but not a lot of food. Your city was probably going to say, well, we want to make sure we're getting a lot of food right now, but if you're saying, no, I really need to build this thing really fast, you could switch to production focus, and then your city would pick all of the tiles with the highest production. You could also pick all of the tiles with the highest gold, science, culture, etc. And so there's a plethora of things you can do to kind of micromanage your city, but for the most part, especially when learning the game, just leave it on default, but know that this is where your production is currently coming from. It's from which citizens are working which tiles, and then the buildings that you have. So our palace here in our city is giving us +3 production.
And worth mentioning that When it comes to the tiles that your citizens are working, only tiles within a 3-tile radius of your city are going to be worked by the city. So your city can grow to gigantic sizes. It can expand to 4, even
I think
5
5 tiles I think is the max, yeah.
Right. But your citizens are only ever going to work tiles within a 3-tile radius of your city unless it's a strategic resource, and then you can gain that strategic resource.
Right, and so that's another thing to consider when you're placing multiple cities, is making sure that you place your cities at an optimal distance so they don't overlap. You can overlap, and that's fine, but you're going to be competing for working for tiles. But you also want to take into account that even if a city is at a size where it has 5 tiles out, you're not going to be able to actually work the tiles that are further than 3 tiles away. So yeah, good call there. Okay, so we have now chosen our production. The last thing that is telling us that we need to do is we need to give a unit order. So if you click this button, it's going to find any unit that you have that currently has nothing to do. And so that's our warrior, which we haven't moved yet. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to just move him out in this direction. And as you see, I moved him only 1 square at a time, which is generally a good way to do this, especially early on, because you want to be able to adjust where you're going depending on different factors. So I'm going to explore up this way. Oh, and look at that. Look, there's some foxes by the coast there. I found the coast. So this is a really good bit of information to have. I can kind of use this to figure out where I want to explore next.
See, I already knew that there were foxes. One of the perks of being an observer. I'm like God here, looking at the entire map. I can tell you who your opponents are. It's fantastic.
Hey, no spoilers, no spoilers. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to hit next turn. We're going to let everything calculate out, and we're going to see what happens. So if I go over here and click this button, or if I just hit enter on my keyboard, we're going to calculate to the next turn. So it's waiting for the other players, the AI players, and our next turn has begun. And I think that we're going to end the video there for the first part of this, and we'll be right back with another one, continuing with this understanding of the basics of Civ 5. So I've been Price, and I've been with Rick.
Yep.
And we'll see you guys next time.